Welcome back,
Excuse me.
loners. Thank you all for tuning into another video here. We appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in, liking, subscribing, commenting, and jumping over to our vlog channel. This is episode 319. Alright, so today we're going to do a video called Why the US Government Can't Convince Americans to Have Kids. I think the simple answer is shit's too expensive, but let's see what they have to say.
America's fertility rates are hovering around historic lows, with approximately 1.6 births per woman over her lifetime. This is below the level needed to sustain the population, which is 2.1 births per woman.
We're actually projecting that about 1 in 4 young adults today will never have kids. There are plenty of us out there who are kind of concerned about the falling birth rate, both for kind of its impact on people's ordinary lives, as well as for the ways in which it'll affect our economy and our government.
And we will support baby bonuses for a new baby boom. How does that
Ew.
sound? That sounds pretty good. I want a baby boom.
Our population
Ew.
will in the not too distant future start to decline. And so that's why
Well, look, yeah, it looks like they're blaming young people for not having kids, when in reality you should be blaming the system that is causing that to happen, which is why is income inequality so high here? Why does cost of living not match up to how much people get paid? Like, these are all things that should be
Well, they
dealt
do
with.
give incentives if you have children here.
Yeah, I understand the $5,000 a year or whatever for a kid.
It's like 5,000 or 6,000.
That's not worth it.
Of course, it's not worth it. But there are a lot of stupid people who do have children because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't take many brain cells to realize a kid costs a lot more than $6,000 a year.
this is an issue for governments and for the economy, and politicians are starting to pay attention.
The concern here in the US is that if we see kind of dramatic declines in fertility, we will eventually see also kind of a drag on our economy and our capacity
Interesting.
to
They want little
cover all
slaves.
sorts of
That's what it
government
seems like.
programs like Medicare and Social Security.
Our population is sort of getting older on average. And what that means is we have the baby boomers who are, in their older age years. So they are drawing Social Security, and they also have quite a bit of medical and care needs. And so the question is, how will we care for our aging population?
It's very hard in modern US society to combine work and having kids. We have very little by way of support to families in this country.
Maybe because when baby boomers were young, you only needed one income
To afford
feed
everything.
a family of like four.
And live pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. The same way you're not going to have baby boomers are not going to have people to take care of them. I don't think millennials are going to have people to take care of them now.
Yeah,
When
I think
they had the resources then, and now they don't, and now it's kind of switched.
I think that's also why people have kids too. So it's like I can continue our bloodline, and then two, so that
Take care
I'll
of
have
you.
someone to take care of me when I'm older.
Well, clearly not.
Yeah.
In this country.
Here's why the government can't seem to convince Americans to start families. When birth rates fall, it affects the entire economy.
One of the big drivers of economic growth is just having more people in your society, more consumers, more workers, more taxpayers. In East Asia and countries like Japan, for instance, that have seen below replacement fertility for a long while and are now actually just shrinking demographically.
Well,
both in terms
I've actually heard from like online and from Japanese women that the reason that they're doing this like collectively in Japan and even in South Korea is because the women are kind of on strike about how the governments are not listening to their needs that they want as women to be represented in those countries. So that's their way of striking back, is not giving birth.
Chastity belt summer. No, I'm kidding.
But like it's honestly, it is a good plan because
yeah.
that's like women are needed a lot in this world.
Until
and
it turns into the Handmaid's Tale and they start
Yeah,
forcing
I
women
know.
to have children.
yeah.
of the Japanese economy, there's been stagnation, but also in terms of the Japanese government having greater difficulty kind of paying the tab for the challenges they face in terms of quickly supporting an older population that is relying to an important degree on the Japanese government.
With the worker to retiree ratio ratio shrinking, Social Security and similar programs could struggle to remain financially sustainable.
The Social Security trustees put out a report about how long they expect Social Security to stay solvent. I think the current estimation is 2033. So people are worried about that. What's interesting, though, is that the lever that we are trying to force on people now is that people should have more children, so that then eventually, 20 years from now or so, we'd have more work.
It's so stupid because I guarantee you, if they had built a society where people get paid fairly, where there's basic necessities of life taken care of and people don't have to stress, if they gave like care for the children when they were young, like that was tax dollar funded, government funded, I guarantee people would have more kids. If they weren't stressing how to pay rent, how to pay their mortgage, how to do these things, people would have more kids. Way more.
Who would then be paying into it. It doesn't seem like a very efficient system to me because it doesn't solve the short-term solvency problem.
Leaders across the U.S. political spectrum have proposed ways to address the birth rate decline.
You've got Elon Musk, who is essentially having the ear of the president and
Well,
the
he
White
knows a
House,
lot about
and
having
he's very
kids.
much
I know.
interested not only in increasing birth rates, but this notion that the best and brightest should really be reproducing. And then you have someone like J.D. Vance.
So let me say very simply, I want more babies in the United States of America.
That man should not be
You have,
That
I
talking
was
would say, a
weird.
more
about
sort of
babies.
religiously or
Put 'em
conservatively
on a
oriented
list.
bent about this. So it's not just about increasing births, but it's about increasing births within sort of a traditional family. So marital status is really important to this group.
We had the Democrats pushing
Just kidding.
really hard for an expanded child tax credit. Now the Republicans come out with something called a baby bonus. That's what the New York Times reported. That would be $5,000.
Imagine having a kid and you're holding it and you're like, oh, my little baby bonus.
at the time a child is born. This is a pretty common policy in other countries that there's some extra child allowance, child tax credit, baby bonus sent to parents when they have a newborn. Having a newborn is expensive.
Both political parties have proposed policies that provide money to families either in the form of direct cash or tax refunds. But experts say one-off proposals
I think it's just a one-time payment. That like first year the kid is born.
I think there's a bonus when you give birth.
Yeah.
Allegedly, I don't know. I don't know when.
But
that
I'm saying I don't
started.
think it's recurring every year.
There is a child tax credit. So every year when you do your taxes, I don't know the exact amount, but and this is fairly recent. This has not been going on for a decade. This is less than a decade, to my understanding, where when you do your taxes, as part of your refund, you get a child tax credit.
Yeah.
So that's when you do get those extra like
got it.
$6,000.
I don't think it's that much every year.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Interesting.
Could be wrong. I don't know if it's till they're 18 or if it's till they're like 12 or 13. I don't
Yeah.
know. But it's through a childhood for sure.
Yeah.
But experts say one-off proposals are not likely to move the needle for families.
The
Shit.
kinds of financial incentives or benefits that we're providing just really aren't enough to change the calculus of a trade-off of bringing a child into one's household or family. That's an 18-year commitment. It's not just a 1 year.
It's a lifetime.
That's
it's
a
lifetime commitment.
And that's something that's wrong with Americans is we've convinced ourselves that once your kid turns 18, you're supposed to just pretty much kick them out and like let them sink or swim. That is insane.
Yeah.
18 is baby still. Okay, you should be taking care of your fucking kid still.
That's being sort of bandied about is not likely to budge fertility rates.
The United States lacks key policies that other comparable nations have
Baby's
that
like,
could
"Why am I
potentially
here?"
encourage family formation, such as federal paid parental leave, flexible work, and
Yeah.
some fertility care access.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
U.S. offers less cash and services than the average OECD country. However, it is above average when it comes to providing tax breaks for families with kids.
Research suggests to us that these were family studies that markedly increasing like the child tax credit can have a modest but noteworthy effect on births. What we estimate is that if we were to increase, for instance, the child tax credit to $4,500 per child, it's about $2,000 right now. That would lead to an increase in fertility of between 3 and 10%. On the one hand, that's a pretty modest number. On the other hand, if you kind of look at that effect over the course of the century, we're talking about millions and millions of extra kids being born because of this additional financial incentives.
That's
but even
wild.
wealthy countries with stronger social programs continue to struggle with low birth rates.
France really has been spending a lot on pro-family policies. They now have one of the higher fertility rates in Europe. It's still not above 2, it's still low. How much of their policy emphasis actually helped sort of stall out the decline so they're in better shape than some other countries is a really difficult empirical question to answer. But I do think it might be a glimmer of, optimism on the policy front, suggesting if we really do a lot to support families, we at least might be able to stall out the birth rate decline.
Many governments have attempted to influence or even limit their citizens' family formation practices, such as Japan's recent pro-natalist campaigns or China's one-child policy. But studies have found that these policies may have unintended consequences.
It's hard to imagine a scenario where the government can say to people, well, we just really need you to have kids because it's important for our country. Sort of a take one
It's
for...
important for our wallets.
Yeah.
Please. They look at your kids as an investment
For themselves.
and their family's future, and that's it. That's really sad.
The team patriotic kind of exhortation, like that's not probably going to happen. They've tried that in China. They're trying it in Japan. They try it in Italy. They try it in Hungary. It doesn't actually work.
Because you're not paying enough.
America's birth rate used to be higher, but it was partly driven by unintended pregnancies, especially among teenagers.
We have actually spent years, decades, and millions of dollars from the federal government trying to reduce our teen pregnancy rate, which was much higher than other industrialized countries. And so I think that's a good news story. The downside is births at older ages have not risen enough to offset the declines we're seeing at these very young ages. And so that has driven our overall fertility rate lower, although we all are seeing increases in births to women in their 30s and even in their 40s.
So I think this timing issue is also another question. Has this sort of delay in adulthood, the delay in people feeling like they can find a partner, they can afford a house, is all of that pushing childbearing to
what do you think?
such a late age that people are going to wind up having fewer
They're saying it like that's some crazy hypothesis, or theory. Like, come on. Obviously, because shit is expensive and people aren't getting paid enough, they're not having
People
as many
are just
kids.
too tired and stressed to fucking worry about throwing a kid in the mix.
The fuck, are you kidding me? When I see people with kids, I'm like, I couldn't do that right now.
Exactly, I agree. Especially because I do feel like people are way more politically aware of, the state of the world now than ever.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're like, why the fuck would I bring a kid into this world? And I just feel like people are too, call it responsible. Who knows? That's what I would call it. I mean, I think it's pretty irresponsible to bring a child into this world unless you know you're not going to pretty much make their life a living hell while they're here.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately a lot of parents cannot say.
Children than they intend or than they would like. And that raises a policy question. Is there anything policy can do about that to make people feel like they don't have to wait until their 30s to get started having a family? And this isn't to say people should start having kids earlier if they don't want to, but are there people who would start having kids earlier if it weren't at the same time that a lot of work demands were placed on people? If it were easier to afford a house?
No
before you got
shit.
to your late
I'm sorry,
30s?
come
They
on.
don't even give
Policy-
women maternity leave. Like
They
it's-
do.
Okay, it's like a month.
But it's not a requirement.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not a
companies are
requirement.
not required to. Like, they can ask you to come back 2 days after you just left the hospital.
Yeah,
Why
it-
on earth would I have a kid at that?
It should be a federal requirement, yeah.
It should be minimum a year. Minimum a year. A year is like basic
Yeah.
to be home with your kid. Maternity and paternity leave.
And institutional changes we could make there.
The Trump administration has vocally
Ali,
supported
we're just speaking for
increasing
America, by the way. I'm speaking for the United States. My bad.
access to IVF. However, it also cut funding for IVF research. The White House did not respond to CNBC's request to participate in this report.
That's weird.
In thinking about the role of IVF in increasing
Well,
fertility.
that just kind of goes to show, they said the administration was saying we want to expand IVF access, but then
Yeah.
at the same time, they cut IVF funding from the CDC.
Make it make sense.
So I think that goes to show those types of things where they say what they're going to do, and then they do the opposite.
Well, yeah, they think by saying it, they just like,
It's already done.
yeah.
Yeah.
IVF is actually pretty complicated. We have companies telling young women, work like crazy during your 20s, and don't worry, we pay for you to freeze your eggs because you can do IVF later. I'm not sure that that's actually going to lead.
I'm so sorry for keep pausing. If anything, that'll work against you, because by the time a woman's in her late 20s or 30s, she has way more clarity on
what she wants.
Wait, hold the hell up. Do I actually want a child?
Yeah.
And you're giving them too much time to think at that point.
Yeah.
To have more children. I think in some sense we're really forcing the trade-off to the extent we're setting up an expectation that people can delay childbearing to their late 30s. In the end, it might actually exacerbate the low fertility rate, or people having fewer children than they sort of ex ante would have liked to have had.
Beyond money.
It's common for fertility to decline during economic uncertainty. It usually rebounds once the shock ends, but birth rates did not recover after the Great Recession.
And that kind of caught a lot of demographers around the world flat-footed, because it also didn't happen in other countries. So this goes against a lot of this demographic history that we have, which led people to start thinking, okay, what exactly might be happening?
Even with stronger economic support, experts say America faces a deeper, more complex problem, a cultural shift in how people view parenthood itself.
More and more young adults are kind of assuming that what matters for them is, their education, their money, and especially their careers is kind of like the source and summit of their lives. And so it'd be helpful for us to kind of move more in the direction of a country like the Netherlands, where part-time work for moms is very common, as a way to kind of, maximize both their opportunity to have a foot in the labor force, but also to kind of give their kids and their families the attention that they think they need and they deserve. So I think that's certainly one answer to this challenge of kind of women, motherhood, and work.
It's not selfish for women to want to pursue work. Women also need to financially protect themselves. Parenting is really hard now. We're expected to do a lot. It's really intense. Kids aren't just running around the neighborhood, right? Coming back for dinner. If you're making a rational calculation, am I going to be the one who steps back, who really specializes in raising children and then leaving myself financially exposed? I think that's a decision that some people are making. That's like something as an economist start to tinker with. We know how to suggest changes to the tax code. We're less adept at suggesting changes in bargaining between men and women. But I do think there's real evidence suggesting that matters.
Immigration can also help offset the economic impacts of population decline, but it's politically and demographically uncertain long term.
So we could have more workers, which we could do by having more immigrants, and instead we're heading the opposite.
I was going to mention this, but then I was like, this may be too soon to let it be a talking point, but I guess
direction of that, with fewer immigrants and getting rid of many immigrants in the United States.
I certainly think that immigration is a solution to some of our challenges demographically speaking. The majority of the countries across the globe now are seeing below replacement fertility, including Mexico, actually. If, the vast majority of countries across the globe are also seeing below replacement fertility.
You can't count on them to reproduce the type of children you want, but you can for workers, because that's pretty much how the government sees immigrants here anyway. But I do think now with these white nationalists in office, they want white children to be pumped out.
Realistically, yeah.
We can't kind of count on immigration indefinitely to address our demographic challenges.
I think if we committed to public child care, like they have in many other countries, we might move the needle. But these are long-term sustained investments. And then we're really looking at sort of slow-moving changes, because you have to change the decision-making, the lifetime calculus that somebody is thinking about in their 20s. That's why it's hard to imagine a policy lever that's going to dramatically change things in the next few years.
Also, these kids are stupid nowadays, and that's coming from me. I don't know how comfortable I'd feel sending my kid to.
I think it has to do with social media and being on technology so soon now.
I'm surprised they didn't mention school shootings in this at all, because that's where my brain goes. I'm like, I would never be able to send my kid to a school in this state.
Yeah, that's a huge point, actually. Yeah, it's very true.
Let's see what some of the comments say. $5,000 to have a kid, but we're going to cut every safety net. Basically, people can't afford kids. Honestly, that simple. The wolves are upset that the sheep are aren't breeding. It's funny.
You don't have kids because your nation asked for them. You have them because you want them, and you can give them a good life.
It's really crazy how blunt they are about, like, who's going to be the workers and take care of the old people.
Animals won't breed in captivity unless certain conditions are met.
I have heard that.
Interesting. 1-bedroom apartments are $1,600, while medium income is like $40K. We can't afford to take care of ourselves. Greed is the downfall of our society. Yeah, and I do think since 2008, it's been a lot of real estate being bought up by Wall Street. It's been a lot of things like that. Like corporate greed has just been continuing to rise, and income and people's share of the wealth has been continuing to go down. So realistically, you're not gonna. I mean, I think, I hate to do this, but I think it's irresponsible at this point if you are not comfortable to have kids, and that sounds really bad, but
I don't think it sounds bad. I think you have to also note that it's not your fault if you're not financially comfortable. It's the government's fault. It's the economy. It's not you. And
and I don't know.
For the most part.
Yeah, I don't know. But I feel like I would feel bad bringing a kid into this world and then having stresses about money, and then witnessing that and then being a part of that. It messes with their head. Yeah, it messes with their head and their psychology growing up. It messes up a lot of things.
Yeah, it puts them in this fight or flight, and it traumatizes them. It's like, most people are going to end up somewhat traumatized, but if you can prevent some of that, why not?
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like we're preaching to the choir. I feel like there's no one who is watching this is genuinely boggled that people don't want to have kids right now.
I know. But please leave your opinions down below in the comments on this situation. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe and jump over to our vlog channel.
Bye, guys.
Bye.